You are listening to the On Purpose podcast. There's a moment in every man's life, especially for veterans, first responders, and men called to lead, when the uniform comes off but the mission doesn't end. Too many try to navigate that transition alone without structure, accountability, or brotherhood. That's why I'm proud to partner with Mission's Purpose, a community built for men who refuse to drift. Inside the school platform, you get live calls, challenges, frameworks, and disciplined brotherhood that pushes you to rebuild purpose, direction, and daily structure. If you're ready for the next chapter of your mission, click the link in the show notes to join us inside the Mission's Purpose community on school. You were never meant to walk this road alone. I want to share something with you that I've personally seen work. I've known Dr. Elise Rigney for over a decade, and if you're a business owner whose business can't run without you, every decision, every approval, every fire, that's not just exhausting, it's limiting your growth. What I respect about Dr. Elise is that she doesn't preach hustle, she teaches structure. Her program, The Rewire Method, helps business owners delegate, build real operational support, and finally step into the CEO role without losing visibility or control. If that's where you're at, go to the link in the show notes and use the code PURPOSE for $100 off. And remember, structure creates freedom. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where you know it's our honor and privilege to show up with you each and every week, to have this space in your life to take a little bit of your attention from other things you could be doing. We don't take that lightly. And part of what brings us here is sharing stories and getting people to think differently, move differently, process information a little bit differently. And this week, I'm super excited to bring on one of my friends for over 20 years now. It's hard to believe. Over 20 years I've known this guy.
Crazy.
And he's the founder of Veritas Athletic Performance. But I knew him all the way back as a college intern before he was a super successful business owner. And I can't think of anybody more humble, more gracious, and that I would want having influence in my life as a coach that Matt Erdman. And Matt, is truly a privilege to get to share your story with our people, because I love one of the catch lines I found in some research for you is your work is not about building strength or speed. That's the byproduct. You're really building confident, capable human beings. So Matt, Thank you for that, and welcome to the show.
Dude, I love it. It is wild to think way back in the day of hitting up some of those ride-alongs when I was interning, not knowing what the heck was going on, man. Like, this is a complete full circle.
Yeah, dude, what was it about those early days, do you remember, from your side, that allowed us to connect? Because I'm probably, a little over 10 years older than you, so there's a different age gap there. What was it, do you remember specifically? Because my first memory is you coming to the DT Academy as an intern.
Right.
And me being like, wow, this college guy is better than most of these adults we've hired. Not that you weren't an adult, but you were a college student, you know?
Yeah, I was still a college dork. Like, there's nothing about that's to debate. Man, I think the simplicity of it. I mean, I'm a small town farm kid at heart, and I don't think that'll ever go away. And in the different environments, whatever it was, whether it was the mat room, whether you were in teaching, or whether we went out and dealt with the ridiculousness that was on patrol, like, you were the same dude. And like, that authenticity was not always something that was easily found anywhere that I had gone previously, right? Going through school, being part of some athletics and different things. Like, it was just refreshing to see somebody who was who they were, regardless of the situation, the circumstance. And that kind of led me to the point of, like, this is a good place to be able to come hang out and learn how to do stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's something we've always tried to be who we are, right? Like, I can't be my best if I'm always trying to be somebody else for different audiences. But I remember, I liked your questions, right? I mean, you would ask questions to actually understand, not to argue a point or share with me what you already thought you knew about something, which is it seems crazy, right? When you're in a training environment, how many people show up actually not wanting to learn, but just to defend what they already think they know?
Yeah, right. It is wild, right? People spend money to go to these trainings to basically hopefully have you tell them that they've been right all along, right? I don't want to have to learn that I may need to adjust something, or I may be 80% right and that 20% was totally egregious and I should probably fix that and move on. I just want you to tell me that everything's good. And right, I think a lot of that too came from my parents. I mean, they were never people like ego was never a thing. Like smack talking. Like when I played sports, I couldn't tell you if I ever actually trash talked to another human the whole time I played. And a lot of it was just like, hey, shut your mouth, do your job, be respectful, and there's always going to be people that you can learn from. And if you stop thinking that you can learn, you're probably going to be a pretty worthless human. And so that's stuff that kind of just kept building as I keep getting older.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm honored to have you here, but you're a strength coach or a speed coach. You know we can't just jump into. I got to warm you up, man. But here's the deal. I know you've been
Loosen up.
You've been part of the community for a while, but you've not heard these questions, Matt. Let me tell you that right now.
Oh, I can't wait. I was wondering what you're going to come up with, man. I'm excited. Let's get it working.
All right, here we go. You wake up tomorrow with 1 extra hour in your day. You get 1 extra hour, do whatever you want. What are you going to do with it?
First, I am going to, I'm going to read something for enjoyment. I have been terrible about doing that. And with kids, right, always trying to tell them to read. They're like, Dad, you never read. I'm like, oh, trust me, the stuff I read is not that much fun. Journals, articles, textbooks, blah, blah, blah. So probably if we just have that time to sit there, just read something, to whether it was educational or just for the heck of it, that would probably be my first go-to.
I love it. All right, now on the flip side, you get to remove one distraction from your life for a week. What are you going to get rid of?
Does it have to be tangible, or can it be anything?
This is your world. You tell me what you want to get rid of for a week. You just can't have it for a week.
I love it. The comparison and fear, right? I would take away a whole week of not feeling like I need to compare, contrast with what I'm doing to what somebody else is doing. So that way it could just kind of feel, honestly, more enjoyment and more fulfillment from it, instead of oh, does this line up with what these folks are doing, or is this as good as what they're getting with their athletes or with their kids, any of those types of things, and just be able to trust what you're doing in the moment and just let it continue and be patient with the process without having to always drown out that noise every 20 minutes or however long it comes.
That's a good answer there. What's one book that changed how you think?
Ooh. You know what? It's interesting. This has been a minute since I've read it, but it's still stuck with me. It's a book called, there's two of them. I forget which is the first one, but it's Piercing the Darkness. It's by Frankie Peretti. It's probably written 30 some odd years ago, if not longer. But it's basically a lot about spiritual warfare, and just goes into a little bit of some details. It's a fictional story, but it just made me think a lot more what goes on behind the scenes, the stuff that we can't see, and the things that take place in order for everything to kind of keep happening around us. And whether it's, you want to call it a coincidence, wherever you put your faith in it. Personally, there ain't no such thing as a coincidence. Everything has a purpose for it. But I think that's a big one that's kind of shaped a lot of the thoughts of the bigger picture for me as I keep getting older.
Good one. I have to look that up. All right. What's one word that describes how you're showing up this year?
Man, I'm confident, right? And that was an intentional piece. We just did a family move about 6 months ago, and moved family, moved schools, moved the business, all the stuff. And it's one of those where, right, I've started to kind of get to the point of being confident enough in what we're doing and seeing the success of it, of yes, we can do this. Yes, we can make it work. So if we're going to go do this, when I walk into some place, right, I'm going to be confident that we can help whatever it is, right? Does it mean I'm going to be the best in the world? No. But it's definitely going to be able to make the room better, or the kids better, or the people better, or my family better, wherever it is that I get to. So that's going to be the biggest piece of just confidently doing and going every place for the year.
So how do you catch yourself? What do you do when you catch yourself not being there?
Man, like it's those little things, and I think some of it comes down to like I think if we're not confident about what we're doing or where we are, we find ourselves going back to slipping into things that give us the comfort, whether that's a simple daydreaming, whether that's getting lost in some type of social media context or randomness. Um, I find that when I'm confident in a place, like there is no other thing that's going to be a distraction because you're focused on what it is that you have the intent of being there for. And so, when I start to feel like those little pieces of it, that's just that little click and that cue of like, hold tight, right? This is not what the intent is, and the confidence of the piece of stepping into this room is. Put those pieces away, focus on what we have to deal with.
Yeah. So you intentionally like create space for a minute there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that afflicts a lot of people more than we realize, especially when we look and we're like, oh, these people have it going on. Look how solid they are, right? Everybody has those battles. It's what do we do when they show up? Like, how do we reframe it to get ourselves back to where we want to be? Because it does your family no good. It does you no good to make all these leaps if you're not going to believe you're capable of it once you get there.
Yeah. And I think a huge thing to kind of wrap your head around is that no matter what, like you're in one of three phases of life, like you're either about to go into a storm, you're in the middle of the storm, or you're just coming out of it, right? And while you may have a little bit of some leeway in those transition points to kind of, either regroup, put things back together, or prep for whatever's coming forward, like there's always something that you're dealing with or that people are dealing with on one end of it or the other. And I think so many times we just want to believe that there's so many people just walking through life with nothing but rainbow and sunshine that falls on them 24/7 because we get caught up in things that we see 12 seconds of, and we tell ourselves that that's the truth. Um, but yet we refuse to let ourselves have our 12 seconds of joy because we can't find that because we're always looking at somebody else's 12 seconds. Where if we stopped and we took a breath, we're like, yeah, wait a second, I have that same thing. Like I have these people, I have this family, I have this. How am I not as happy? Well, that's a great part. Like that's a good starting point to figure that out.
That's a good way to do it. All right, one more warm-up question, Matt. You get to have a 5-minute conversation with your future self, like 20, 30 years down the road. What are you going to ask future Matt?
How the kids turn out.
Oh, nice.
Right. So we got where are we at? 14, 13, 10, and 8. So we'll all be odd numbers by the time we get through the year. But yeah, if we go down, if I get to talk to 60-year-old me, my question would be, hey, how do they turn out? What do I need to try to forecast if we can adjust it? Because that's always the thing, right? I mean, everyone's always, thankfully our kids are awesome, right? Outside of the house, at home, obviously, like any kid, they cause havoc and destruction, all the things. But it's always nice, right? You get compliments, teachers, coaches, all these things, and it's just, and people ask like, well, how do you raise such good kids? And I always tell them, I said, get back to me in 10 years and let's see if that's actually still true. Because, right, we're doing everything that we feel is best for the time being. But I think the truth comes in like, what do they look like when they're 25? Are they still doing the same things? Do we instill enough in them to still have this same type of character and qualities, or did we falter someplace?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question because you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'm just pondering what would that conversation be like. But yeah, parenting is one of the biggest gambles in life, man. You do everything you think is right, like you said, in the moment, and ultimately they're human beings, so they got to take the information, process it, and make decisions that they think is right in the moment. And you just hope that somewhere they align.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Matt, Talk to me about. Let's start with your journey. Let's start with from internship to where you are now and how your experiences led you down this path?
Gosh, it's wild to think that, yeah, in 2006, while it seems like forever ago, like it's wild to think in 20 years, this is kind of the progress that we've gone to. Um, Man, it's crazy because going through it and right, not entirely sure what the heck I was going to do out of school, and then I stumbled into this internship with y'all and right, found a home, found awesome people to be able to hang with, and it was just one of those, like it felt like the right spot for me to be able to keep growing and maturing and have good people surround me as we connect. And the best thing I ever did was surround myself with people like you, with Al Brown, right, and a few others who, right, had a little bit of seniority on me, right? You'd be about 10 years older than me. Gosh, I don't know what's Al, 15 years older, right? So I was still a young dork, right, shoot, 22 when I got hired. Didn't know my head from a hole in the ground, let alone know how to do police work. And so getting myself with people that were drastically better, smarter, and just way more professional was the beginning of really just letting me see the difference of what I could accomplish, not just in police work, but just in life. And, the more that we started doing stuff, the more I didn't realize at the time, but the more coaching was exactly what I was doing and what I was having fun with, right? We started joining the defensive tactics team and right, you're training people every month and you're coaching, you're doing pieces. And then that leads to being a field training officer where you have somebody in your car for 3 to 5 weeks at a time, every shift, 12 to whoever long hours it takes to get done. And right, the coaching and the connection with those people was huge because even to this day, like there's a handful of the people that I trained that we still talk with. And that was 18 years ago that we did that. It wasn't because I was amazing and it wasn't because that I helped them do so many things. It was just because we've got to, establish that relationship and be together in their time of growth where we were able to keep that connection all the way through to where they currently sit. A lot of those people have, also left law enforcement, they're business owners or they work for somebody else, but it's still a lot of the same. And right, it was weird just figuring out like how those things were all came kind of back to coaching and just making sure that you could help other people be better and put more emphasis on somebody else rather than yourself. And so that kind of just kept snowballing the longer that we kept doing work.
Yeah, talk to me. You shared something I think super insightful for the community that is you got the job, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to do something that's allowed you to surround yourself with the kind of people that are going to help you become who you wanted to be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, shoot, if you would have been a car wash dude, right, I probably would have joined up and been a car wash dude. Like it didn't matter because, right, it wasn't so much about, I mean, yes, the job it was fun. It was enjoyable, right? There's a lot of noble things that went to it of what we did. But it came back to the people you surround yourself with, right? We could all think of, regardless of what job you're in, career, field work, don't matter. You could all think of the absolute worst job you've ever done. But if you were there with really good people, the job wasn't that bad. And, or the task, whatever it is, it's a smaller piece. And we can think of the opposite way. We can think of the very best job we ever had in our life or something that should have been super enjoyable, but either we were doing it by ourselves or we were doing it with people that didn't have the same mission, values, and morals that we did. And it's like, man, this is zero fun at all. Like, I don't have anyone to share this with or to celebrate with or to push me, right? I don't know if I'm getting better because it's just me and I got to like worry about these people. And right, that was something where I could see if I knew I hung around the right folks, unless I fell down and hit my head on a rock, like I was going to have to get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that circle we surround ourselves is so critical, and I think that's a place that we should always be constantly evaluating, right? Are the people in my circle now, do they still deserve to be there? Am I still growing? Or do I need to make changes? And when I think back to your young days and I think back to that, I think that was what really brought everybody in that group together is we were always training, we were always learning, and no one had all the answers, so everybody valued the input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was right. I mean, it was super uncomfortable at first, right? If I had shown up to training not knowing stuff, and you're just like, "Hey, what do you think?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What do I think? I've been here for 2 years. I don't know what I think yet." You're like, "No, like, what do you think? It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, but like, let's get some thoughts out there and let's figure out what's the best piece." Um, and it was that environment of right. It's training. Let's take the fear aspect out of this of being afraid to be wrong, and right, this is a spot where no one's going to die in the time being. Right, it's not going to be a wrong answer. You're not going to get fired for saying the wrong thing. Let's solve the problem. And that was the biggest piece. It wasn't about who's right, who's wrong. It was let's solve the problem. Or a lot of times, I mean, shoot, it was stuff that we got brought and people like, hey, we need to do this. And the first question we asked was, what problem are we trying to solve? And a lot of time there wasn't a problem we're trying to solve. And so that started a whole nother conversation to right to figure out what the heck we're actually doing. And right, those things have been huge in all the different aspects where I've gone through because right, decision making, critical thinking, teamwork, collaborating is universal.
Yeah, and I think just reflecting back, I think one of the subconscious things without even considering it that united us and made us friends and where we valued our time together was we had both been high level athletes and we both had experienced coaches that invested in us and made us want to play for them. And we'd been on ones that the coaches coached out of ego and you just couldn't wait to get away from them. And we're able to take that parallel and realize, like, wait, this is the same thing we're doing. We're trying to teach people to believe in themselves in the most crazy moment they are ever going to face. That doesn't work if they're scared of me, if our ego is in the way of them performing. And I think that's one of the things I always really admired about you, Matt, is you coach and you teach with such a humbleness because we realize that we are the confluence of the information, not the performer of the task.
Right.
So what is the best? Is my information going to make the performer win? Or is it my belief in them that they can do it that's going to get them to win? And a lot of times we get those confused.
No, I mean, gosh, you couldn't be more right. I mean, you're talking about trying to take people from every walk of life to get them to believe and be confident that when people are trying to kill other people, your job is to run in there and stop it. And that's not a normal thing. And so it doesn't matter. You could hand them every textbook in the world, every manual. Here's A to B's, right? Step 1 through 97. But the bottom line is, with all the instruction in the world, if they don't actually believe that they can do it, it doesn't matter. And that doesn't mean that you just gaslight them and it's like, oh yeah, that was a great job, right? 47 rounds went down range, 0 of them went on a 12-foot piece of cardboard. Like that ain't gonna fly, right? So there's still standards, but it comes down to it is how much of performance is already ruined before they even begin because they are either afraid of that they can't accomplish it or they're terrified of the situation being put in, not the real situation, the training situation, right? And I know we've talked about this a ton with, right, law enforcement world with firearms quals. You get people that are terrified of being able to put 10 rounds on paper. But if we dropped them into any environment and just said, hey, there's a bad guy, you got 3 seconds, what's your decision? They do amazing. And right, it comes down to, well, why are they not confident in the most simplest form of what they're trying to do? Well, who ruined that for them? To be honest, like what coach or trainer, instructor ruined the world for them? And right, and so the world I sit in now with a bunch of youth athletes, it's no different, right? And I think the expansion of this is, right, parents, how have your parents ruined this for you potentially? Um, Gosh, I can't tell you how many parents are like, oh, they're not very athletic, and the kid's standing right there. I'm just like, can we not do that? Like, you're literally in the same room. Like, let's not tear them down right here.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about when did you realize that coaching was going to be your path forward, and that specifically athletic performance, not a sport. You went into getting them to perform in their sport. When did you realize that was going to be your path?
Ooh, man, I think the initial piece was a car ride of you and me going down to Academy down in Denver right after I got into the training unit. And we were talking about stuff, and you were talking about, like, hey, your schedule's not as rigid, you don't have this and that. What are you interested in doing? And I was like, I'd like to get back into helping um, coach one way or the other, whether it's football, whether it's weight room stuff, whatever it is. And your exact response was, cool, why are you waiting? And I was like, that's a solid question. So, like, we got back, and the next day I cold emailed like the coaches in Fort Collins throughout the high school, and one of them wrote me back, and that was the beginning of me spending 4 years in their weight room with their football team. And right, so I think that was the big push of, like, shoot, this is something that I've already done in law enforcement for like the last decade of coaching, right? Coaching is coaching, whatever is the instruction or the medium of how I'm delivering, right? My ability to coach something shouldn't change as long as I have the knowledge on it. Like, I can't make stuff up. And so when I got in that environment, man, it was really, man, I don't know how to exactly explain it, but it was just like, this is it. Of It was a spot where it felt incredibly rewarding to be in, to give kids things that I wish I would have had when I was their age. Now that I was, shoot, in my late 20s, probably when we started this. And right, I look back to 16-year-old me. I'm like, man, I wish I would have known more than just, at the time Nebraska played really good football, we should just do whatever the heck they do. Because it didn't exactly get me as good as I could have been. And so as I started doing this, it was one of those, like, okay, how is it that I can be someone who can not just give the information and the tactical, right, movement and mechanical piece and those things, but how can we do that in addition to getting them to believe that they're just as good as these kids they see on TikTok and on social. And a lot of that comes down to, right, coaching through confidence and just giving them those skill sets to realize that they can do it.
Dude, that's so funny. I'm reminiscing on that ride because I remember that as well. And the importance of putting people around us that are not status quo, unless you want to be status quo, right? Because imagine you were with somebody else in the car. That conversation could go completely different. Like, they might have told you all the reasons not to do it. You're going to give up a lot of your time. Just do this. This is why work extra hours. But where's the growth, right? Where's the challenge?
Yeah. And it's wild, right? Because if we think, like, I think we can all look at parts in our life and conversations in our life where we had somebody kind of have those little pivot moments and speak the truth of, hey, why don't you just do this? Or here's the best advice, or the confidence piece. Um, like, I can go through from high school, right, college, early professionalism stuff with you, and then getting into coaching, right? I can pinpoint exact conversations that I was able to have with different people and coaches that had the same effect on me to get me to not, like, totally change what I was doing, but to give me the ability and the confidence to either keep pursuing or alter a little bit and be able to give me a better vision standpoint as to what the next step should be. And all of that, whether you realize it or not, it all comes down to who you surround yourself with, because there's groups of people that they want to be crabs in the bucket, where if one tries to get out, they're going to pull your little butt back in there and say, stay miserable with us. And you got other people who are literally grabbing you by your shirt collar and throwing you out of the bucket, saying, go do this. It's your time. Make it happen. And right, those are the people that I would say 99 times out of 100 have your best interest at heart, and they have the most confidence, and they see the things in you that you fail to see yourself.
That is so important, right? What a gift we can give others is to help them see what you see in them, right? And because selfishly, that job we had in the office took a lot of our time. Selfishly, I could have told you, just focus on this, because then you could have done a couple more cases that I wouldn't have to do, right? Like, but that wouldn't be the right thing, right? Our job as humans should always be to help people around us, excuse me, see what's possible, see where things can go that maybe we lose sight of in the hustle bustle of the day.
Right. Yeah. I could have taken a few more of those and just called it even. And
if somebody trusts you enough to give you that insight in their life, what's the responsibility we have to use it properly? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I don't know. I mean, you've coached tons and tons of people, and it's one of those, like, it hurts sometimes. Like, you get kids or athletes or professionals that come in and you coach them, and you can see the opportunities that they have and the skill sets they have, and they refuse to be able to step out and do something because it could be scary, or it's different, or it's unknown. Right. And you just look at it and say, well, then what are we doing then? Are we really trying to get better? Or are you just trying to have me tell you that it's okay just to stay there and be mediocre, right? Or be average? Yeah, if you want to stay there, like, there's nothing wrong with that, but don't lie to yourself or anybody else that you actually want to do something more if you don't have the ability to keep doing it. And, like, that's always something I'll tell kids all the time. Like, if anybody who's an adult ever tells you I could have done something, they're lying. Because if they could have done it, they would have. Right? You get all these people, it's like, oh, I could have went to this school. I was like, and I'll flat out tell people to their face. And I was like, I could have. No, you couldn't have. I was like, I'll stop. I said, stop. I said, quit lying to yourself. You're too old. I said, if you could have done it, you would have gone. I said, you made an excuse as to why it is that you didn't accomplish that. And I said, you just need to agree that you did it and move on. And right, it's easier for us to try to make those little myths true sometimes, instead of finding those people around us that says, no, dude, get off your butt. Why don't you go start coaching? Oh, brilliant question.
The other thing, that statement, I could have, tells me you're living in the past.
Yes.
Don't tell me what you could have done. What are we doing?
Yep.
Right. I literally don't care what 11th grade version of you could have done. What is 42-year-old you doing today? Like, that's more exciting for me.
Yeah, it is, because if we're still in our 40s operating as a 17-year-old, like, we got more work to do than anything else under the sun. And it is. I mean, it's just being able to have enough self-awareness to realize, you know what, I wasn't good enough to keep going, right? I'll tell kids all the time, they're like, Coach, you played here? I said, stop. I said, I did not play. I was on the team. And they look at you weird. They're like, what do you mean? I was like, I never saw the field. I was on the team. I can't even tell you that I played. And and then that leads to the conversation of going through that. And they're like, well, what happened? So we go through the story, we talk about it. And I was like, yeah, I didn't make it because I wasn't focused enough, right? These things happen, right? It's a business, like all the different things. I said, and 100% of it was on me. Like it wasn't a coach's fault. It wasn't a program's fault. It was my fault because I lost the desire and my purpose to keep trying. And so I had enough and I went on. So I'm not going to tell you that I should have had all these things. I could have if I would have stayed with my focus and my purpose and my intent, but I didn't. And so now as a coach, right, I get to share that experience with a lot of kids of things change, environments change. And when it happens, like you have to be able to figure out how you're going to keep adjusting, or you're going to be one of those people that falls away as well.
Yeah, I think just the acceptance of it, right? Like, because I was the same. I thought I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. I get to college and I realize, like, whoa, there's a whole nother level that I just don't have the skills to. I'm not competitive here. So I hold on to that, and that becomes your identity. Well, it's easy to see where you don't compete in other places in life, right? Like you're always being held back versus accepting, like, that was a chapter. I can go new places and create new stories now. And I think that's one of the greatest things we can teach our young people is nothing in life is really permanent. Make decisions. If it goes bad, it doesn't work out, you're going to learn. You're going to get new information on what might go right. You can pivot. You can do things again. But we have such an idea that every decision we make is so serious right now. And, oh my God, it's going to shape the rest of your life. And it's really not. Like you're either going to find something you enjoy and do more of it, or you're going to go, hey, that wasn't really for me, but what can I learn from this, and go find something else.
Yeah. I mean, there's a phrase, right? Uh, Failure isn't fatal and success isn't final, right? So neither one means that you're at the end of your game, right? Cool. You won the Super Bowl. Now what? We're going to take like a month off and start preparing for next year. I mean, there's still another season coming, right? Hey, you're the Raiders. You're 2 and I don't know what. They're terrible. What are you guys doing? They're doing the exact same thing the Super Bowl team's doing. They're trying to prepare the exact same way, right? So the only way that stops is if we get to those points, right? We get the trophy and we quit, right? We get the promotion and we stop working as hard, or right, we on the other end, oh, I made a bad decision. I'm never making a decision again, right? Those are the points when we stop having any type of growth or progress, and you start to get people that just stay right in that middle ground and love it because it's quote unquote safe. I don't have to make these decisions. No one's going to expect too much of me. I want to just let myself just ride this little train for the next 30 years, be miserable, and call it good.
Talk to me about the identity of Veritas. What does that mean, and how did you pick that name? Because that's always intrigued me.
Man, good. So Veritas is Latin for truth. So it comes from several aspects. One is faith. So John 14:6, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. So that was a big piece of it from where we put our faith in our family. Another part was law enforcement, right? Oddly enough, can't tell you how many times we took people to jail that had Veritas tattooed on them somewhere. And it was one of those that's right in police work. Your job was to find the truth. You couldn't have emotions. You couldn't have your own opinions. You looked at facts, and facts were everything. So truth was truth. Here's our decision. That meant sometimes nice people went to jail. It meant sometimes that bad people didn't go to jail because you can't argue with it. And the last part of it is just truth and training, right? You get kids who say that they can do all this stuff, and athletes that can, right, post on social media that they run stupid fast times or they jump 9,000 feet. And you come in and it's like, this is where truth is going to come find you, right? If you're telling the truth, you got nothing to be afraid of. If not, you probably got some humble pie to eat, and then we're going to figure out how to get you to where you want to be. And that's the biggest aspect or for what we accomplish is, right, we still want to be truthful in training. We're not just going to pat somebody on the butt and say, good job, Johnny, you showed up for the last 3 months. I have no idea if you got better or not, but, tell your mom and dad, thanks for sending you. Right, the truth aspect has a accountability piece on me, because if I'm not truthful and if I don't get them better, they're going to go play a sport or go do something. And if they can't do that better to some aspect, then right, they're going to look at that and say, well, that wasn't worth a darn thing. What do we actually get out of this? So that's kind of the three-pronged aspect of like kind of where that came from.
I love it. Talk about I want to talk about this for a minute, is creating micro successes for your students, right? And one of the things I love on the social media is checking out the kids as they sign their name on the speed limit sign, right? They're giving a tangible feedback that the small work they're doing is making a difference, which I think oftentimes as coaches we don't do enough of making sure people realize the small work in the process is actually making them better. We sit back and we watch for an outcome, and if the outcome is good, we think our work was good. And if the outcome wasn't favorable, we think our work sucked. And the truth is, sometimes your work isn't very good and your team wins in spite of you.
Mm-hmm.
Other times your work is great and the outcome is not favorable because the other team just had a great day. The ref made a bad call, none of which is in your control.
Yep.
So talk to me about that conscious effort you've made to build the micro successes so that they enjoy the process more.
No, it's a big piece, and I think a phrase that we use a ton is process over product, right? And so many times we get caught up in the product. Track is one that everyone wants to look at, and right, you have all these kids that are like, well, I want to run this time. And I'm like, cool, but we're not even like, why are we even looking at the time? Let's go back to all the things that make up what equals your time, right? What does your start look like? How's your transition? What does your mechanics look like? Are you able to actually hit what you need to, right? Do you look relatively close to hitting the shapes that we need to mechanically to be able to run this fast, to even think about running that speed? Because if not, you can focus on the end result all you want. You will never, ever get there because your process is trash. And there's so many things that we get caught up with, and right, everything needs to be done in 12 seconds and get it done quickly, right? It's hard for people to see the long term of realizing, like, if I'm in this section, I just need to focus on making this section really good, and then the end product will take care of itself. A phrase or like kind of an analogy I like to use for kids is you get two baseball players, right? One of them hits a little dribbler that bounces off the mound, takes a different direction, and they end up getting a base hit based off of right luck. The next guy up hits a 403-foot rope to center field that the center fielder makes an amazing play on. He's out. So if you look at this by the end result, the first guy was actually successful and the second guy wasn't. If you look at this from a process standpoint, the second guy is going to be exponentially more successful if that's how he routinely hits the ball than the first person, because the first person needed other things influencing his ability to make him successful. The second person was able to dial in his process and realize, like, cool, I'm just going to keep raking this ball and it's going to go wherever it needs to, and eventually it's going to find its home. And that's where we're trying to get kids to understand that you may have some end days where the product is not what you want, but the process of itself, we're going to figure out how to make sure that we can walk away with something that we know we did better. Because unless we just literally walked in the room and fall down all day long, there's stuff that we can look at and say, we did this better than we did. Yeah.
So share that with me. Share with me, how do we get people to realize what they did better in the process? Because when I think of that, the process is boring. It's dull. Nobody watches the process. The outcome is the sexy part. The accolades are there. There's a scoreboard you can see. So how do we get them to recognize the good they did? And maybe they had a bad practice. Maybe they're, because you're a speed guy, so maybe their splits are a little slower than they were the last time you had them. Maybe everything was just a little off, but they still did something good by being there. How do we get them to find that?
Man, I think a big piece comes down to connection with the kids and like the relationship you have with whoever you're coaching and being able to just be truthful about what it is. And right with that, now you can have those honest conversations to be like, cool, you're right. You didn't run your fastest time. Things looked off and it wasn't your best day. However, let's look at this. So we have like a little 5% rule when we do our sprints. So as long as you stay within 5% of your best time, we're doing pretty solid. If we get less than that, that's probably when we start to throw up the red flags. It's like, all right, you probably didn't eat any breakfast. You slept 3 hours last night because you played Fortnite and drank Mountain Dew all day long. Right. So there's things that start to pop up that leads us down a different category. But this is one of those where we can start to find those. So last night, for example, I had a volleyball group in, and we did some games, changed the direction stuff, made them think. And then we finished with timing some of their sprints. And there was a young lady who matched her fastest time 3 times in a row. And she was upset because she didn't set a record. And so after this, I said, why are you so mad? I was like, you literally ran your fastest time 3 times in a row. You could never sniff that 3 weeks ago, and now you're hitting it on command. She's like, well, it's not a record. I said, great. I said, if you set a record every day, you'd run the Olympics in 28 and you'd run a 7-second 100-meter dash. I said, that's not feasible, is it? No, I guess that's not feasible. I said, cool. Now here's what you need to realize. So we talked about, I said, your average speed now is the fastest you could ever run. So you just ran 3 sprints at your fastest speed. I said, that's a win. Because before it was like 8 to 9% slower than that if we were lucky, and you would spike one really good run and then the rest of them would be really who knows where. So I said, your consistency is way better. And I said, what happens when we're consistently doing something really well? She's like, we get better. I said, thank you. So I said, you're consistently now hitting your top speed. So I said, you're going to end up getting a new top speed, and we're going to start the process all over again. So I said, you don't have to be happy that you didn't set a new record. You can be a little disappointed. I can live with that. But you still have to appreciate the fact that you got better and let yourself enjoy that. Because if we only get better when we set records, we're going to be pretty disappointed and miserable a big chunk of our life.
Yeah, finding the joy in the process. Right? Finding the joy in what we're doing is a choice. Happiness is usually the result. Something goes our way, we feel happy for a little while. Yep. Something doesn't go our way, we're sad. But choosing to find joy in the work we're doing, I think, is one of the biggest things a coach can give their students, because it puts the value on the process more than the product.
Right. And it's always, right, you set a record, yeah, we're getting excited. Cool, you hit a new mile per hour? Absolutely. Let's sign the sign. Let's take your picture. Let's post it. Tell your friends, right? Do all the things. But we're still going to celebrate, right, the little things that we do well. Some people, guess what? Kids can't skip. They can't gallop. They can't be very coordinated. When they can figure that out, that's huge. And, right, we're going to get excited about those things because that's part of the process to get you to where you want to be. And without some of those aspects of it, right, we bypass it. It's essentially like we forget that we have to do addition before we know how to do algebra. And, right, we're trying to just skip to algebra, but I don't even know why people started to put letters in math, and now I'm confused as all get out. And, right, we get confused, and that's, right, in professional world, that's the equivalent of the person who got hired and or promoted just because. And then they get there, they're like, oh, I don't even know that was part of our business. I'm like, oh, goodness sakes. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's universal.
That makes me laugh because I always think of this story, this time, man, when a teacher's like, yeah, this kid can't do math. And I was like, what do you mean he can't do math? They're like, yeah, he just can't do these problems. I'm like, those aren't math problems. That's a reading issue. That's a paragraph.
I know.
Can the kid read? No, his reading scores are low. Well, of course they can't read this and decipher the math problem from a paragraph. Like, what happened to just some good old numbers? So Matt, I want to ask you about this. What's the biggest thing you've learned in your business journey that you weren't prepared for? And then on the other side, give me something that you took away from law enforcement that's been super helpful for you as an entrepreneur.
Let's go with from law enforcement side first. So in doing that job, it forces you to be, if you do it well, it forces you to be able to communicate with anybody under the sun about anything for however long it possibly takes. It don't matter. You're on the side of the street talking to some dude for 3 hours while they're doing who knows what, and you got to sit there and figure out how to not make it really awkward or to make them think about all the stuff that they want to do and keep them engaged. And right, that's been super helpful in all the stuff that I've gone and done since then, is because having a conversation is not just about filling space with sound. It's about figuring out who the person is that you're in front of and what is it that you can do to connect with them for whatever reason. And it could just be the fact that you need to waste 10 minutes of time while you're waiting for something. Or, right, you are in an interview, or you're talking with a parent, or you're talking with a coach or a school or a team about like, hey, here's what we want to do as far as, right, why you should partner with us. Here's what we want to bring and be able to offer. And it comes down to, once again, it's a conversation and communication that's comfortable and confident, because one, you know what it is that you're doing, but two, talking with people's not a struggle, right? And that is a huge piece, because if you leave it to me, I will sit in a room all by myself with absolutely no other human and be quiet. And so that really forced me to realize, like, put on the little chameleon clothes every now and then and keep the conversation aspect of it. Man, the business part of it, there's so many, because I'm still trying to figure that one out. I think the biggest thing for me business wise is it's so hard to wrap your head around the fact that when you go into business, you do your own business, like, you are selling yourself. And right, once again, the product of what you're selling is the outcome, but initially people are looking at you as to, like, who are you? Why should I trust you with my kid or my team? And give me examples. And so at first I hated trying to sell stuff, right? Right. Hey, you should come train. Here's this, here's that, proposals to teams, all this stuff. And the more I've done it, the more I look at it from a standpoint of, like, it's not bragging, it's not egotistical. Like, we're looking at, once again, facts, right? If I didn't make anybody better in the last, 5 years that we've been doing this as a business, then yeah, it would be a struggle to convince you to send your kids or your team to me to make them there. But right now I can look at this and say plainly, here's the group that I'm a part of that helps me become a better coach. Here's the X number of athletes that we've trained. Here is their progress, right? This is reasonable for your team, your kids to be able to accomplish as well, as long as they show up and they give good effort. And so it's one of those where figuring out how to give yourself the comfort of sales so that way you can feel confident with it. Yeah, and that's and the biggest piece. And realistically, right, until someone tells you flat out no, man, the door's always open. Like, just keep banging on that thing and asking if they want to keep coming.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you said there as far as using the metrics, right? Using the numbers, the facts, not your opinion, but the facts, because then that does give you confidence to walk into that room and go, no, I actually have facts. I'm not just delusional thinking this. Here's numbers. That's so important for business.
Yeah, it is. And there's so many things as I keep doing this, right, on the business side of it. They're like, hey, are you tracking this stuff? I'm like, a business standpoint, not on the athlete side, but like on your business. I'm like, no. Like, well, that'd be kind of like never tracking your stuff on your kids and just telling them that they're getting better. I was like, oh, that's a good point. I should probably start tracking that to make sure I'm actually moving in the right direction. Yeah, man, it's always something new to be able to keep learning.
Always something new. Matt, what's one idea you hope people take away with them from this conversation?
I would say figure out what it is that you truly enjoy and you're good at. And then let that be your driver for how you face your career decisions, right? If you're really good at something and it looks like it's a hard aspect for you to be able to figure out how to make a living for that with your family or with whatever you got going on, right? That doesn't mean just sell everything and start doing it, but there should be some type of planned effort as we move forward through the rest of this year at least to say, okay, if this is something I truly enjoy and I'm good at, how is it that I can make this at the bare minimum a side hustle by the end of 26, right? How is it that I can make this something where it gives me not just does it give me joy anymore, but it gives me a little bit of some freedom in whatever that is, right? Does it mean freedom because you have a little bit more spending money or you can pay off your loans or bills, or it gives you the avenue of like, cool, this is my 2-year exit strategy and here we go. Now I can work for myself or start this with somebody.
Yeah, that's good. Matt, thank you so much for joining us this week. It's an honor to share your story. Where can our community follow along with you and become part of your network?
No, I love it. So website is veritasathleticperformance.com. Twitter, it's not Twitter anymore. X and Instagram is just Coach Erdman. Those are the best places to be able to find stuff that we put out for our kids.
We'll throw all those in the show notes and links to them all. Matt, thanks again for joining us. Keep up the good work, my friend. We love what you're doing.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate the time.
When you're training with purpose, your fueling can't be an afterthought. That's why I use Never Second, the simplest, most reliable system I have found for staying energized, hydrated, and steady through their long efforts. Their C-Series carbs take the guesswork out of performance. No stomach drama, no complicated mixing, just clean, consistent fuel that actually works when the miles get long. If you want to train with more intention and recover without feeling wrecked, check out Never Second. Click the link in the show notes to get dialed in. And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.